Hello Earthlings out on Earthland, this is Sam Science here. We've got another amazing show for you today and we're going to be talking about engineering and physics. And to do that we're going to be looking at the science and engineering behind jet propelled cars. And here I have with me this amazing model that you're going to be building today. It's a very, very cool jet propelled car. And the reason we're doing this is because we want to show you what the science and engineering is behind special projects that are going on at the moment. And one of those projects is the Bloodhound rocket racing. Well, it's not a racing car, it's a sort of drag car, if you will. But the car that's you can see in the image here is actually being designed and engineered to break the world land speed record for the fastest car on Earth. And in fact, the team who built this car also built what was called Thrust SSC, and in 1997, Thrust SSC broke the land speed record, and it did a speed of 1,227 kilometers an hour. Can you imagine going that fast in a car? You travel maybe at 150, 120 kilometers an hour in your parents' car. Can you imagine going 10 times that speed? It's a very, very, very fast car. Now they want to go even faster, building the Bloodhound rocket-propelled car. And here you have what's called a hybrid car. It's got a jet engine on it, and you can see the rocket engine just up here. And when they fire both of these engines, this vehicle is expected to go over over 2,000 kilometers an hour. It's extremely fast. Just imagine that most aircraft fly at around about 800 to 900 kilometers an hour, so it's even faster than your average commercial jet. It's a very, very fast car. And what we're going to be doing today is to learning about the engineering and science behind these cars. We'll be looking at Newton's laws of motion, especially the third law of motion, which we'll go over a little bit later in the show. But to start with, we're going to talk about engineering. You can see the car has many different components to it, and these components all have different names, and we use what we call in the industry terminology. And terminology is a word that we use to help us to describe special things in special industries. And in the engineering industry, we have lots and lots of terminology. In fact, you use terminology too, even though you don't realize it. ROFL, LOL, that's terminology you may have heard of, I'm sure, before. But today's terminology is to do with engineering of vehicles like this. And some of the things we're going to be looking at today, I'll just take the jet engine off here, is the special components of this car. First of all, we have here the thing called the chassis, okay? And I've got a chassis over here, and all cars somehow or other have a chassis. This is the chassis here, and this is the piece of equipment and all of the other parts or components that the car are built on. It's called a chassis, and this is where all vehicles start their lives, is with the chassis, and then you add the engines and the wheels and the various bits and pieces and the body to it. So this is one of the components that we want you to remember. The terminology is called a chassis. The other very important part of this car is the wheels and the axle. Oops, you can see that fell off there, doesn't matter, we can put that back on later. And you can see this car has a very special system of wheels, and this is the axle down here, this is the wheel, and these here are very important components, and these are called bearings, okay? We have a bearing on each side, or a bearing interface on each side of the axle here to stop the wheels from moving too far. So these are very important parts of the vehicle's terminology. We have axles, wheels, bearings, and the chassis. So make sure you remember those terms. We'll be coming back to them during the course of the show. So what we're going to do now is we've got about 40 minutes to build this car. It's quite a big project for today. You need to be ready with your materials and equipment. We're just going to take a short break now to get all the pieces ready for you, and then we're going to start construction. So what I want you to do now is get all the materials from your kit, the components, that's another terminology, the components from your kit ready on the table. You'll need for this the heat gun. I'm just going to get my heat gun over here. There's the heat gun there with the, not the heat gun, the glue gun, I'm sorry. You'll need the glue gun for this. You'll need a roll of double-sided tape. It's a good idea to have your ruler and scissors ready as well, just in case we have to measure everything. And because I'm nearly blind, I'm going to have to use my glasses. So we're going to stop for a little while, come back in just a few seconds, and we'll be ready to start the construction of your very own jet-powered car. Let's go. Okay, and we're back now to start the most amazing project, and I'm really looking forward to showing you how to do this. We have all the equipment out with us here. You should have received this in your packs by now. We've sent you the Jet Car Activities and Experiment package, and I would like to see that you have laid out your components similar to me on the tabletop here. We're going to go over each set of components quickly just so you know what to do, but essentially what we're going to do now is assemble all of these components here into our jet propelled car, and you'll have something a bit like the Bloodhound. It's obviously not going to go as fast as the Bloodhound. This car will not do 2,000 kilometers an hour, but certainly it will go quite fast if it's built correctly. And that's what I need to remind people of, is that engineering is a very precise art, and being a good engineer means you have to follow instructions but also try to copy what I'm doing very precisely, and if you do that, you'll have a great car to finish up with, and who knows, we might have a chance to race them together in the coming weeks and months. That's what we hope to do, is organize a big event where you can bring your jet cars out and we can all race them together. So let's begin. Let's go over some of these components because I want you to learn the terminology, make sure we know what's going on. And I'm going to start from over here where we have the spoiler system over here. You can see the spoiler. There it is, the aerodynamic spoiler. That's very important, and then the two holders for the spoilers there. Okay, so that's going to be one of the things we'll put on a bit later. But most importantly, we've got the axles here. This is the long axle. You can see it there. I'll just hold it over here so you can see it. There's one that goes on the rear of the vehicle, and there's a shorter one which goes on the forward part of the vehicle, the chassis. Okay, so this is the axle system, and to keep the axles in place, we have what's called the bearings. And you'll see here that they're marked with different letters, and this is the rear bearing. It's marked with R, and these will eventually fit into these slots behind here. And then we have the, obviously, F, which is the front bearings, which are the ones that will go into the front of these two slots in the front here. And to hold those in place, to keep the axles from moving too much, we've got these very small, what we call, I think they're called bearing interfaces here, which stop the axle from moving to the left and the right, which will be very important to ensure that your car doesn't slow down if the wheels touch the edge. We don't want that to happen. Okay, so obviously we've got the wheels, and you'll have each one of these wheels is made of 3 separate pieces of plywood, and you'll notice in this particular case you've got 2 slightly larger plywood wheels and 1 slightly smaller one. And I can show you in close-up cam. You can see there, this is the center part of this wheel system, and the center wheel is a little bit smaller, and there's 2 larger ones that go on the outside. There's a very important reason we do that. I'll show you later on. And with the rear wheels, once again, there's 3 separate pieces to the rear wheels, and these will be attaching together later in the show to make up 1 whole wheel. This is a very important component as well, and we'll be showing you that. There's 3 of these for each side. Okay, so the left side has 3 plywood wheel discs, and the right side has 3 as well. Then we have the chassis again. You've heard about the chassis, and it's got lots of different slots which we attach different things to later on. And if you notice, we cut a hole in the center to reduce the weight, because essentially the less weight you have in your vehicle, the less mass, then the faster it will go, or the faster it will accelerate when you launch it. The more mass a vehicle has, the slower the acceleration. So it's a very important, the more mass, it steals energy from the system. And then coming over here, we have the front spoiler system. This is the front spoiler system here. It's got 3 components to it, you can see just there. And then we have, very importantly, we're going to make a tray table for the top of this, and the tray table for the top will in fact carry in future either your smartphone, so we can measure acceleration and deceleration, but what we hope to do in future is actually to add Arduino to this, which is one project as an Arduino accelerometer, which will send signals to your handphone. But more later on, what we hope to do is actually add solar panels to the vehicle, and you can actually we're going to want to electrify this vehicle in future, and we've got plans to actually put a solar panel on top and run your vehicle with solar panels and capacitors. That could be quite exciting as well. So we've got some fantastic things coming up. But for now, the last but not least, we'll be running this with a jet engine. Yes, and this is your jet engine here, and if you notice, it's got a very small orifice or hole at this end, and that is designed to let air out. And we're going to use Newton's third law of motion to make this car move in a forward direction. So let's begin the construction. And I think what we're going to do is start with the installation of the axles and the wheels. Okay, so let's begin. I'm going to get the heat gun. I always call it a heat gun, don't I? I'll get it right one day. It's called a glue gun. Get it right, Sam, a glue gun. Don't forget it. Okay, we'll get the glue gun over here, and let's get ready to do the necessary adhesion for the axle system. Now, just like a little safety warning and reminder, remember, this is very hot. Don't touch it with your fingers and try not to get hot glue on your skin. It will burn. It's not very comfortable. You won't get a life-threatening injury from this, but certainly it's not very nice if you use it carelessly. And I am very concerned also for the fact that people must take responsibility for using tools and use them wisely and use them carefully. Right, all engineers respect machines and tools, and certainly if you do, then an accident becomes almost impossible. Right, let's begin. So first of all, we're going to stick the bearings into the chassis, and I want to place them all in position. You take the ones with the F marked on them, and you can see there's a hole, two sets of holes here, and I just want to make sure I'm pointing that to the camera, and we're going to put the first set of bearings into the holes like this. Now, we're not going to glue these yet because I've actually made it so you can adjust the steering, and if you see, I can move that a little bit forward and a little forward and aft, and that's to make very fine adjustments of the steering in future. So we're not going to glue these just yet, and you can see there's a very tight fit there. And I'm going to put the two forward bearings in place here, and just put them in there and stick them down like that, and you see they do have a bit of room to move backwards and forwards, and we've put that there in on purpose. Okay, that's there for a reason. All right, and we're going to install the two rear bearings. Oops, sorry, there it is there. And you can see here there's smaller slots on each side of the chassis here, and we'll put these bearings in here. Now, you'll notice something about these is that they've got a little indentation on them, and you can see the indentation just there. And what we're going to do is pop them down, not all the way through, because what we're going to do is take these little things, they look like half moons, okay? Can you see those? There we go. I just hold them up for you there so I can get those. And we're going to slot them into the side of the bearings. Just pop one in there. And once you've done that, we can actually hot glue it in place, okay? Just pop it in there. They're a little bit tight, some of them. Let's turn that one over. And it takes a little bit of practice to do it, but it will actually fit in eventually. You just have to push it down. There it is. Oops, it's not quite the first one in place. There it is now. Okay, and you can see it's in position there. And what we're going to do is instantly hot glue that in place. So we just touch it off with hot glue on the surface there. Just one little line across there. You don't need to use much hot glue. It's not necessary to put gallons of hot glue on this, just a little bit around the edge there. And essentially that's the first bearing glued into place there. You can see it just there. Okay, let's do the other side. Pick up the rear bearing. You can see it's got the letter R written on it. We're going to put it nearly 3/4 of the way down until you get to that little notch. It's called a tongue and a groove. There we go. Then we're going to take the bearing holder, and we're just going to slide it into the side there. And as I say, it does take a little bit of time, but don't be in a hurry. Just do it carefully, like that, and bring it down, and we're going to hot glue that in place with a little bit of hot glue just across the top there. One across the top and a little bit around the edge here. As I say, don't use too much. It's not necessary. Okay, that should be fine there. So we've just got a little bit of glue around this edge here and around the top of that where it looks like a semicircle joins with the other semicircle. So we'll just let that dry for a while, It's very quick to dry, but remember not to touch it with your fingers while it's drying, okay? While we're waiting for that to dry, what we can do is put that just to one side for the moment, because we're going to build the actual part that lives on the top of your car. It's like a special accessories box, and it lives on the top of the car, and it's very easy to put together. So what we'll do is we'll start with the accessories box, and I've got these components here. You can see these ones just here. There we go, these ones here, and there's like two big, they look like archways, and then there's two smaller pieces that go actually under the chassis there, and then we've got these two parts here which actually retain the bottle. Now I will warn you that these are very delicate pieces just here. This part just here is very easily broken, so just please be careful of this part here, and likewise for this one here. Don't bend them or force them, because they will break off. You can glue them back together with hot glue, but it's better not to break them in the first place. So let's put this together now, and what we're going to do is take this piece here. This is the tray that's going to hold your phone or the Arduino, and the first thing we're going to do is to glue the sides, and we have two side pieces, and we'll just test fit them first of all. I always like offering up test fit like that. Push it on nice and hard. There we go, and that seems to work pretty well. You can see it's put in there quite nicely. Okay, and we're just going to run a few little glue spots across here, and what I'll do is what we call a gusset or a fillet of glue in there. So you're just going to run across there easily with the glue. I'm trying to look at myself doing it on the screen so I don't make a mistake. See, that glue is pretty hot, but you have the first part in place there just now. I'm just going to hold up the camera so you can see the glue in there. Do exactly the same thing on the other side. Put the piece on, and remember it's got to be quite square as well. Can you see how the sides are 90 degrees to the top? If it's sort of like bent in or bent out, that's not a very good situation. So just make sure that those sides are square. And once again, we're going to run another bead of glue. It's called a bead of glue down the side there, just a little bit. And you just push the trigger very gently. And then once it's glued, we're just going to make sure it's pushed into place. Okay, and that's pretty much fixed, and you can see how it's nice and square. It really is important to keep those sides and the top at 90 degrees. All right, now let's put the front and the back end on. You can see, let's offer it up first of all. You can see the front has got a slightly larger hole. It doesn't actually matter at the moment which end it goes on, but we're just going to find out if it fits first of all. You can see how it fits very neatly on the end there. It's the front side. And once again, we can put a little bit of glue on the top, and just a little bit down here. And I'm going to run a little bead down these sides here too, just to make sure it's all stuck into place. Okay, there we go. It's holding in. I'm going to do that side too, and I'll bring it around to the camera so you can see what's happening. Can you see on both edges there? That's good. Just gently put the glue in place, and it's a good idea just to hold the edges in there securely just for a few moments until the glue sets. That's going to take just a few seconds to dry. Sometimes I just blow on it gently to help the glue to set, and once it's set in a few seconds, then you can do exactly the same thing to this piece on this side. Is that we're going to click it on, and it's quite a tight fit sometimes, this one. There we go. And make sure it's pressed on all sides there. There it is. Don't be a surprise if sometimes it doesn't always fit exactly as you imagine. It does take a little bit of work, especially this one. It's quite tight at the top there. In fact, I may have to use another piece, but anyway, I think we can get this one on. There we go. On she goes. Okay, so once we have this side glued on, we can take this piece here. It's the other side of the tray table, and fix it carefully, remembering to be very careful of these edges here because they are quite brittle. But the first thing I do is just offer it up, carefully press it on to the tongue and groove settings there. Oh, hang on, we've popped off there. And you'll see how this is going to fit onto the rest of the car later on, and just very carefully fit those pieces on the side and push the center down. And once we've done that, we can actually put some glue on it. So there it is there, it's all fixed on. So let's glue that together now. I'm just going to make sure it's pressed in nice and tightly so it's, you see how the tray table looks properly glued to, properly in place. Let's put a little bit of glue in there. First, I'm going to start at the top here. Run a little bit, a bead of glue across there. And remember, you don't pull the trigger too hard, okay? It's not necessary to squeeze large amounts of glue onto these components here. And then we're going to run another set of glue down this edge here. And that one there. And just spin it over and do exactly the same thing on the other side. I've just touched some glue and it really hurt my finger then. So just remember that glue is hot and it will burn you. And sometimes it's a good idea to have a little bit of cold water nearby just in case you do get some glue on your fingers, as to it really helps to slow the burning down, because I just burnt my little pinky then. It hurts. Anyway, please be careful of the glue gun. It really is very hot. A glass of water, cold water beside you is good. So there's the tray table. You can see it there. It's ready to go. We'll put that aside for a while. These two components go with the tray table. You can see them there, and we'll put them on there. Now this is all dry, so let's put the axles and the wheels in place. Now the first thing I'm going to do is position the axles, and this is a little bit tricky, so I'm going to turn the chassis upside down, as you can see there, and the axles are pointing, the bearing is pointing upwards. Remember, we haven't glued down those front ones yet, and I've got some little bearing plates here, or I call them bearing surfaces here, which will stop the axle from sliding. So the first thing we're going to do is actually put two of these on the axle. You have the axle here, okay, and I'm just going to try and show it on close-up cam. You have the axle there, and we're just going to slide these on and gently push two of them on. Doesn't matter where they are, just leave them in the center for the moment, okay? And you can do that with both axles. Once again, just going to push that one on the center there. They should fit, very snug fit on each side, okay? It should be quite, they shouldn't slip too easily on this. See there it is there, okay? And what we can do is actually put these axles into the bearing. So I'm just going to slide that one in there. Now watch what I do is sliding in, sliding in, sliding in, all the way up, and sliding in, sliding in, sliding in like this. And then we can just put these bearing plates just right next to the axles like that. Slide them up next to the axles, and a little bit later we'll be gluing those into position, but you should notice that this spins quite freely, and we're going to do exactly the same thing to the front wheels, as we'll slide one in there like this. You can see it here, and then one in this side here, okay? And then you can see there you've got the front and rear axles, and I'm just going to spin those bearing plates out, and so it's leaving approximately equal amounts of the axle on each side there. I'll just get that in camera. You can see there's about even amounts of the axle sticking over the ends of these parts of the chassis here, and that part of the chassis too. Let's get the wheels going. We can put those bearings plates in there. We can glue them in a little bit later. We don't need to do that now. What we do need to do, however, is get the wheels going. So I'm going to get you to select 3 of these pieces of plywood, the plywood wheels, and you can see each of them has a little hole in it. Oops, I just dropped that. You can see each of them has a hole, and what we want to do now is to line up the 3 pieces that have a hole in them, okay? And you can see, I just want you to test that alignment now, and 1, 2, and 3. All right, and you can see there's a complete line through the whole the holes at the top and the bottom are lined, and what we want to do now is just to stick them together just to start with. So what we're going to do now is take the glue gun and just put a little tiny dot of glue on one side of the wheel. I can just do it there, and you only need a very small dot of glue just in the one on each side. Then we're going to put one of these over the top, and you have to line it up so it's properly aligned. Stick it carefully on top, push it down, and you have a little bit of slipping room there. You can, I'm just trying to do it here so you can see you have a little bit of slipping room there. It doesn't last for long before it cools down, but what you need to do is to get both of those exactly one on top of the other, and you can see that there. If I can hold it in there, you can see that's very well aligned now, okay? And the last one we'll put on. So you're going to do this with all the wheel surfaces. 1 dot of glue, 1 dot of glue. You can see the small dot of glue I've got there. Line up the wheels so that the holes are lined up as well. Stick it on and then just slide it into place so that's very nicely held in position. You've got one wheel made there. Now the most important thing is you've got to get these aligned so that the edge of the wheel is nice and smooth. You want that. You don't want any lumps and bumps in there if you can possibly help it. So we like to see these very well aligned. And then you take these small little rectangular pieces. There they are. There's one rectangular piece. You see there's four slightly larger ones and four slightly smaller ones. And you're going to stick them into the wheel. And it should fit very precisely. If you've glued those parts together, you should find that it'll actually slip through very precisely. And don't be surprised if you have to push it quite hard. If it doesn't fit from one way, try it the other way like I'm doing here. Oh, seems to be a bit stuck there. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is make the wheels, and you can see that for these wheels there's actually 3 pieces of plywood wheel hub, as they call them here, and these wheel hubs are designed to fit very precisely together to make a very precisely engineered wheel. And to do that we're going to use the hot glue gun, and you'll see you'll have here these small pieces of rectangular plywood here, and these fit. I'll just put them on the small camera so you can see them, the close-up cam, you can see them there. 4 pieces of plywood. You have 4 large ones and you have 4 small ones here, so you can see those are for the front wheels. So for the larger ones, what we're going to do, it's very simple, is that we put the first wheelbase on the table, preferably with something underneath it. I'm breaking the rules today and not having anything underneath, but you stick one of these into the slot and stick another one into the bottom slot, and these are going to be your guides for getting each one of these one on top of the other. Okay, so get your next wheel and you can see how it's going to fit over the top there. Now what we're going to do is use a very small amount of glue, and I'm just going to touch a little bit of glue on one side and a little bit of glue on the other, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing with this. Okay, I've just got some glue on the tablecloth, sorry kiddo code. And then we're going to put this piece over the top, and we're just going to line it up. Whoops, hold it steadily, line it up and push it down on top there. There we go, there's your first wheel in place. And you've got a little bit of slippage room there, but you should notice that these 2 edges are very precisely aligned. Okay, so there's one in place. Let's do the next one. We've got one more here, and once again you're going to put a small quantity of glue on the both sides of this little piece sticking out here, one on each side. Okay, I'll just show you on the big camera there. There it is. You're going to put a little bit of glue where my fingers are, and a little bit of glue here, and then we're going to put the wheel on. Let me do that quickly now. And remember, just use tiny little dots of glue. You really don't need much glue at all to make this work. Okay, some glue in there, and then we're going to put it on, slide it on top, line it up and push it down, and there you have one wheel finished. Okay, that's your first, and you should notice that the edge of these wheels is particularly smooth. It shouldn't have any lumps or bumps on it. That's going to be very important for the for the performance of your jet-powered car later on. Okay, so there's one wheel. We're going to repeat that process 4 times now to make up the entire wheel system. So once again, we take these small pieces of rectangular plywood, stick them directly into the first of your wheel hubs. A little bit of glue one side, a little bit of glue the other. I'm just touching the trigger very, very gently. So there's not much required. We're going to slide the wheel on. It doesn't matter which way, though. You can go either side. It's really not much difference if you have them one way or the other. Okay, slide it on, push it down gently. Do that again, a bit more glue. The main thing is we want the edge of those wheels to be very, very well aligned, and we're going to stick it on one side down, and there you have another wheel ready to go. That's it. You can see those little pieces of timber sticking out there. That's not a big problem at all, and you see the edges are very, very smooth. A little bit of glue came out, but you can easily just scrape that off with your fingers. And we'll do the front wheels exactly the same way, but you remember now that you can see that the front wheels have 2 larger wheels and one smaller wheel here. This is the hub of the wheel, okay? Now, this smaller one must go in the center. So I'll show you on the close-up cam, and you can see it just there. You can see one is a little bit larger. You see these two out ones are a little bit larger, and the one in the middle is a bit smaller. So make sure you get that in the right sequence. Put them on the table again. And this time use the small rectangular piece. Stick it in the hole. You need 2 of those for each wheel. Okay, a little bit of glue again. It's not much room on this one, so you have to use just a very tiny amount of glue. And then we're going to stick the smaller wheel on. Make sure you get that correct. The smaller wheel has to go on. Okay, so stick that on the middle, because later on we'll be putting some elastic bands in there. And press it down lightly. You'll see a bit of glue squeezing out of the edges there, but that's not a problem. And then we're going to do that one more time. A little bit of glue in there, so you don't need much, just a tiny bit. Okay, and then we're going to stick the larger wheel on top now. This is the slightly larger one, and I'm just going to place it over the top. There's one of the front wheels done already, which is really cool. There we go, it looks really nice. And then we're going to do that one more time with the last template. So the 2 pins, you put them in there, into their holes. Oops. You find they'll fit one way a little bit easier than another. A touch of glue on each side. The smaller wheel, and you can always check it to make sure it's the right one. You can feel that it's got a slightly, you can feel that this one, the one closest to me is larger, the one inside is smaller. Let's place that on quickly before the glue dries. Okay, a little bit more glue in there. And then you can put the last one on. And you've got a little bit of play time with the glue too if the edges are not quite lined, but that's a very nice alignment. Now you can see that alignment, okay? And there we have the wheels are finished. So the last thing we need to do now is actually put the wheels onto the chassis, and it's a little bit tricky doing this, so watch me carefully. They're supposed to be tight, but what we're going to do is work with the larger wheels to begin with, and what I'm going to do is very carefully with you can see this has got a little bit that's sticking out here. We don't obviously want that on the inside of this. What we want is to make sure that's on the outside. It's facing outwards. So with the first wheel, and I'm going to point it towards you here, there are those 2 pieces sticking out. And what you do is you very gently hold the axle and just gently turn the wheels. Now it's supposed to be a little bit tight, okay? It's not that easy. So just rotate them on, rotate them on, rotate them on, hold the axle firm until you see a little bit of the axle poking through. So that's one done there. And then we take the next one, and you can see I've got these 2 pieces sticking out just here. You can see those 2 parts just there. Make sure they're turned outwards so that they're not going to block the way the wheel works when it's being put on. You don't want those 2 pieces facing inwards. Once again, hold the axle firmly, and we're going to spin it on. Spin, spin, spin. It's a little bit tight sometimes, don't worry about that. Here we go, I have to hold it nice and firmly, and we're just going to turn it down. You really have to grip the axle quite firmly to do this, and there's a little bit of that poking through now. You see that part of the axle is just poking through the wheel hub there. Okay, so that's in place, that's good. And to do the final mechanical element of this is we've got to make sure that these two bearings here, these 2 bearing interfaces are pushed not until they're touching the bearing itself. I'm just going to get that the right way. You can see there's a little bit of play there, okay? Can you see that? That's about as much play, because we don't want the wheel to touch the chassis. That's going to spoil the ride, all right? So let's put a little bit of glue in that. When you're satisfied it's in the right place, stick a little bit of glue on it, a little bit of glue there. And that's actually all you need to do to hold those bearings in place. That's very important. You can see the wheels turning very freely. It looks really great. Let's do the same thing to the front of the front axle. So let's get those bearings in place a little bit there. And I've got the distance is about right on each side. So I'm just poking them out. And you see your eyes are very good judge of distances. And this is what we like to train you, is to use your eyes to get the best results from your engineering. once again, we're not going to use the side where those pins are pointing out. They're going to be pointing away from the car. So we're going to turn that on, just gently hold it tight, turn it on. There we go. I'm just going to turn it so you can both see it until the axle's just pointing out of the outside of the hub. You can see there's a little bit of plastic pointing out there. And then the next one on this side, once again, remember that these wooden pieces point away from the chassis, and you're going to screw that on nice and tightly. And it's really all you need is a screw fit for these. It's designed so that you can leave those just tightly positioned on. You need to hold it quite firmly to do this. Okay, so there it is. We've got the wheels on. I'm getting pretty close to getting our cars finished, and you just want to make sure the wheels are quite straight. Give them a little turn. That looks pretty good. And we're going to put these bearing interfaces just at the right distance away from each other on the table here. And when you're satisfied everything looks good and it's turning properly, you can put a little bit of glue on those surfaces there. And be really careful. You only need just a little tiny touch of glue just to make sure that those are held in place. And once again, you should see that these wheels should be turning quite freely. There it is, just there. I'll just show it towards camera. So that's looking pretty good at the moment. I'm really liking the look of that, and you can see it should move very freely across the table there without any resistance or friction at all. Okay, so now we're going to continue with putting the airfoil system on, and you'll see also this system of locks for the front wheel. So you take these two pieces here, and you can see them there. I'll just hold them up towards the camera, and you're going to fit them just now into the front wheel system. I'm just going to get it so you can see there. So let's push those in. It's a little bit like the back wheel, exactly the same in fact, and this just helps to hold the whole system in place, and they're supposed to be a tight fit. We won't be gluing these just yet because there is one procedure I want you to do when we test the car. So we just pop those. Here's the other one there. I'll just hold up to camera. You can see it there. Slide it into the front of those bearings just there. I'm just going to hold that up so you can see it. It takes a bit of a practice. Even I'm a little bit slow with this sometimes. You just have to get it at the right angle I'm trying to do everything towards the camera, and you can see there, those are there in place now. I'll just show them toward the camera, and you can see we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 in place there now, which essentially are to hold the bearings. Now the idea of this is that later on we can actually adjust the steering by putting these forward and back a little bit. You can see they move just a little bit. We can actually adjust the steering of the car, which is something we really have to do at the test phase. Right, next thing, as I said before, we're going to put the spoilers on. These are very cool spoilers, these ones. But what you have to be careful here is the fact that this is a very brittle here, and it will break if you force it, okay? There's nothing that needs forcing. This is very brittle as well, so please be careful as we're installing this on the chassis. Please be careful to make sure that you push these on. And the way this works, and I'm just going to hold it up here on the wide cam, is you take one of these, okay, one of them, and just you have to hold it till it's pointing in the right direction like this. You can see how the back end of the car here and the orientation of this, and basically all you do is you just pull it in and slide it. It sounded like I broke it then, didn't it? And push it very gently. I'm just going to get that in camera here and just push it backwards. Push it backwards. It takes a little bit of force to get it into place, but don't be afraid to just push it quite hard, but just be very careful to make sure that you don't break that bottom part there, okay? It's one in place there. We don't actually need to glue these in place. It's a very tight fit. Let's put this other one in now, and I'm just going to push it in, put it in place. It should be the same orientation. Can you see the orientation there? And we're going to put it and slide it in place and push it gently with your thumb back into position there. If you want, you can put a bit of glue on that, but for the moment we're not going to worry about that. And the last thing, of course, is the spoiler itself, and this is a very important effect. This spoiler is to keep what we call down thrust on the car. It actually helps to keep the car pushed down on the road, and I'm sure you've all seen racing cars before where they have the spoilers which are pointing up, which is again attributable to Newton's third law of motion. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and the spoiler goes on simply like this. You can see I'm pushing it on here, and you just gently push both parts of the spoiler on like that. So it's starting to look like a car now, isn't it? And you should notice that everything works very freely. It should move very easily down the road. I've got one part stopping just there, but I know why that's happening. All right, now let's finish this off. We need to install our jet engine next, so we're going to put the jet engine in. There it is. It's the bottle that you need for this. It's very easy for this, and you notice it's got the hole in there. I'll just hold that up there. That's where the air comes out from the engine. We're going to lay that onto the chassis, okay, and then we're going to put the table on the top of the chassis as well. Now this table is designed to carry your future sensors and solar panels and electronic systems, but it also holds the bottle in place, and we're just going to place that very gently over the top of the bottle, and you'll see that those 4 legs fit into corresponding holes on the chassis. Just push them down gently, line them up and push them down. And this time you've got to be a little bit careful of your car now, because it is getting to a point where it's kind of getting close to being finished. Okay, and then we go there, and then you can turn the whole car upside down like this, and you have these 2 pieces here, and you should find that these pieces will in fact fit very neatly to this point here. Okay, so you just push those on. You might have to just push them through a little bit to get the fit there, so I'm just going to have to push them hard. You've got to sometimes force them through a bit because it is quite a tight fit, but as you can see, that one clicked in there, and this one is going to click in here. You may have to move them a little bit round to get the fit. So that's a pretty tight fit there, okay? We're not going to glue these because we might like to take the tray table off for doing some tests later on. So push these in and then click them into position, and almost ready to roll. And the last thing is the front spoiler. You can see there it's looking pretty cool, the car all together. It should be rolling freely along the top of the tabletop there. The last piece is your front spoiler, and the way this goes in is just, you put this piece, you can see this piece here, it goes into the front hole, those front 2 slot it in, okay, and then you can flip the whole car over, okay, and you've got this piece here, okay, and we will glue this in, and you're going to stick that into the slot. So I've just got a bit of glue there I have to take off. There we go. Right, do that again. Just a minute. It's a bit hard when you're trying to do upside down. Okay, there it is there. Okay, and stick this part in to those 2 slots. You can see it's a tongue and groove fitting, and slide it into place. And as I say, it takes a little bit of effort sometimes to get these things to fit nicely together. I'm just going to turn it around that way so I can see exactly what I'm doing. It's a little bit tricky. There it is. We nearly got it. There it is. Once it fits very easily, okay? We can actually glue that in place, so put a little bit of glue on the surfaces there. I'm just putting 2 small dots of glue at the back there, and that should hold that all into place. And once that's dried a little bit, I'm going to put one more piece of glue, just a bead of glue down here on the front, just to hold it in place, and be very careful of that hot glue. And we've almost finished our car, because all we have to do now is put the front spoiler on. And the front spoiler is, once again, this piece here. And all I'm going to do for the front spoiler is put 2 small pieces of glue, small bits of glue on this edge here. Watch carefully. And you have to hold this in place for a little while, so while it dries, and carefully place the front spoiler on. And it should just slot into the front of the car there. Okay, so you can see there the front spoiler is now on, the tray table's in place. If we go to wide cam, you can actually see the car's pretty much finished. It's looking pretty good. So if we can go back to the wide camera, you see there you have your special jet-powered car. It's really quite spectacular, and believe me, when you get it pumped up, it's going to go very fast. Now, the last thing we're going to do is we've got a bicycle pump here, which came with your kit. This is part of the entire process of pressurizing the bottle. So when we go outside to test in just a few moments, what we're going to do is put air pressure inside this bottle, and then when that air pressure is released, there'll be a stream of gas coming from the back of the car, and according to Newton's laws of motion, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So when there's a gas coming from the rear of the car, then the opposite reactions, the car will start to move forward. And as you've noticed, we've given you some different sizes of exhaust nozzle here, and those different sizes will give you different performances with your car, and we'd like you to test your car and find out what gives you the best performance. Now remember, when you use your car, be sensible. Don't do it in a open area where there's cars driving at high velocity. What we suggest you find is a car park with a very smooth concrete surface. The smoother the surface, the better your car will run. Make sure that there are no moving vehicles or anything that could cause an injury. And we'd like you to go outside and test your cars. Use the different bottle caps. See what happens. Record your results. Film your videos. Send us some pictures. We'd love to see the pictures that you've made and the video you've made. We're looking forward to giving you a shout out on the Kidder Cove websites if you have made the wonderful car, and we wish you a very, very successful racing. And don't forget, we'll probably be organizing a special racing event here at Kidder Cove in the near future, so we look forward to inviting you down to join us for the Jet Car Grand Prix. For now, watch the video coming up of the test procedure, but for now, this is Sam Science signing off. Remember, the more you learn, the more you see. Thank you very much for joining us.